miss it.
I'm sure where you're going to start.
Really, you're gonna start.
Oh, sorry. Hopefully it's nice. Speak along this to the table.
Yeah, well, you gotta control this.
Yeah, especially me.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the April Strategic and Legacy Management Committee meeting. My name is Bob Dorr, and I am the chair of the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee. I would like to announce our committee members. And our committee members for the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee are myself, Bob Dorr, is the chair. James Streeter is our vice chair. Gil Allensworth, David Hoyle, Clint Nagel, George Snyder, and Mary Weber are the committee members. I'd like to let people know what the purpose of this committee is, and I'll read into the record the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee purpose. This committee looks at long-term stewardship, long-term policy, planning, and other strategic matters, includes issues that cross-cut the work of other CAB committees. Its work includes many programmatic topics. Specific areas of interest include development and deployment of technology, the SRS budget decision-making process, future land use, facility disposition, and relevant national environmental policy. At this time, what I'd like to do is ask everyone here to introduce themselves. We'll just take a minute to go around our round table and have people here introduce themselves, and also the public that are here. We'd also like you to introduce yourselves. And once you do that, just as a matter of organization, if people in the general public would like to come up and sit at this table, you're welcome to. If not, you're welcome to stay where you are. So let's all introduce ourselves for the committee record. James, we'll start with you.
James Tanner, Time Solutions.
Tina Watson, Time Solutions, CAB Administrator.
Lisa Kirko, I'm the Acting Federal Coordinator for the CAB.
Mary Weber, CAB.
Gil Allensworth, CAB.
Bob Dorr, CAB.
George Snyder, CAB.
Harold Simon, CAB. From the audience.
I'm Dave Eiler, I'm the Deputy Director of the Savannah River National Lab. I'm Bill Clark with the Department of Energy here at the site.
Joe Ortaldo, member of the board.
John Simpkins, stop on the DHEC.
James Schiller,
Kim Carlson, as far as
On Joe.
Well, Joseph, SRS Heritage Foundation.
Melissa Raleigh, SRS State. Mary Beth Reed, Historian of South Associates.
Tom Colton, Reba.
Thank you. Do we have anyone who's remotely listening to the meeting? Okay, I believe we do. As a point of order for the meeting, I'd like to stress to everyone that the meetings are being recorded live, and if you are going to speak, please state your name and affiliation before speaking. Speak loudly and clearly, and also the microphone does pick up idle chatter, so if you could only speak when you want to make a point during the meeting. It's important that we keep to our agenda topics during the meeting. I also want to state that with our agenda today, that we have a public comment period, or other comments can be heard. Anyone wishing to answer questions or address the CAB must come up to the podium to speak, which I'm not sure where a podium is.
We've got the holdover option going from our last meeting, so we don't currently have those.
Okay, so if someone wants, someone from the public wants to speak, the microphone will pick them up if they stand up here?
Yeah, we just have the people stand, that'll cover it.
Okay. there is no public comment sign-up sheet. I just want you to know that. But also, we do have sign-in sheets for the public and the CAB members. Okay, and I think they're located back here. Okay, so you're welcome to put your name into the record that you attended this meeting. Let's see, at this point we have, I'd like to review the recommendations that we have. And this committee has one open recommendation, and that is recommendation 323, safety procedures and emergency preparedness and response at the Savannah River site and other Department of Energy sites. Okay, and let's see. At this point, we have Bill Clark is here to talk about DOE's response to recommendation. Is it 322 or is it 323? It is 322. Okay. So DOE, her recommendation 322. Is responding to this committee with the DOE point of contact. That's Bill Clark, and he'll provide a brief status of ongoing SRS activities relevant to this committee's purpose. So we're not going to have a question and answer period with Bill. He's here specifically to provide us with an update in regards to this recommendation 322. So Bill, would you be nice enough to come up? Sure. Is that okay?
Good afternoon again. My name is Bill Clark. I'm the director of the Mission Planning Division for the Department of Energy out at the Savannah River site. And interestingly enough, if you go back a slide or so and you read the scope of this committee, it's very close to the scope of the division that I have under my purview, which is looking at the budgets for the site, the cross-cutting activities, programmatic topics, development and deployment of technologies, future land use, facility disposition, and so forth. So what I'd like to do today is just kind of give you just a brief status of kind of where we are with respect to some of the activities that this committee cares about, some of the things that I briefed you on during the actual CAB meeting back in March, including the budgets and so forth. Of course, right now we are in fiscal year 2015, and so we're executing our work scope based on the funding that Congress has allocated to us. We are watching closely our spending rates to make sure that we're spending the money that we've been allocated, but also that we're accomplishing the mission that we desire this year. We're also in the process of interfacing with DOE headquarters to talk about the fiscal year 16 budget, which is currently before Congress. We're answering questions, we're providing feedback on priorities and tweaks that could be made to the way the President submitted the budget to Congress. I believe that Congress will start marking up the bill that would be providing the funding for the Savannah River site next week. And so over the rest of the summer, we'll continue to interact with DOE headquarters, with OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, and with the congressional staff to answer their questions to help them assign the priority that we believe is appropriate for our FY16 budget request, so that we get the money that we've requested, so we can accomplish the scope that was attached to that funding. In addition, we have kicked off in the last week or two our actual development of our fiscal year 2017 budget. So that's the budget that would go into effect 18 months from now. So we're developing our budget. That was, we're taking into account the recommendations and that the Citizens Advisory Board provided to us at your last meeting with respect to the priorities of the high-level waste system or the liquid waste system, our nuclear materials, our safeguard and security, our environmental restoration, and so forth. So we're incorporating the feedback that we've gotten there, along with the priorities that we have internally with respect to risk and reducing the risk at the site and accomplishing the missions that we have assigned. And during the month of May, we'll make an initial submittal of our budget to headquarters. It'll go through a number of changes and evolutions and so forth over the summer before it's finally submitted over to the Office of Management and Budget in the fall. Then we go through a little process of them sending it back to us and marking it up and so forth. And then eventually it becomes the President's budget next February. So that's why one of the reasons it's difficult to plan our budgets is we're doing this 18 months ahead of when we would actually get this money. And so we're making, and we don't know the year in between what those budget numbers are going to be. So it's how many variables can you have as you're developing your budgets. Let's see, with respect to some of our planning activities, we have developed a set of assumptions that we're going to be using that match up to our budgets as best we understand them, that will be used to develop next year's, or excuse me, this year's update to the life cycle. If you remember back in January, Doug Hensey came and briefed the board about, you know, the Savannah River site's life cycle and how all of our activities were moving to the right because of funding constraints and missions and so forth. So we're starting to develop our assumptions and our planning cases to make this year's update to that we would then brief you folks on at the end of this calendar year or early next calendar year. Again, it's a very long and arduous process, and it takes a lot of effort on the part of both the Department of Energy and our contractors, and so even it is a 6-month cycle to go through all of this. We're also developing updates, our annual updates to our 10-year site plans, our land use plans, and our site infrastructure plan. All of those will be completed by the end of the year. One of the things that we're doing this year is making sure all of these plans are using the exact same set of assumptions, the same budget numbers, the same missions, so that all of our plans are aligned and linked appropriately. Let's see, another topic, the cooperation that we have with the military. South Carolina National Guard will have about 120 folks, an engineering battalion on site in July to perform their annual, they do their annual 2-week drills. They're going to be on site actually doing work in lieu of at a training site where they're just moving dirt around or building something and tearing it down or whatever. We've developed a relationship with them where we're actually going to get some work done with these folks while they're training on site. We've also initiated a new partnership with the Department of the Army over at Fort Gordon, where a number of our transitioning soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Marines would have the opportunity to come over to the Savannah River site and actually do work during the last 6 months of their service time. These are folks, it's not like the wounded warriors where they're coming back and they're going to be medically retired. These are folks that may have been in one of the armed services for 20 years or 25 years or more. And this is their first opportunity to see what it's like in the commercial side of the world, not the military side. And so we've had a number of folks that have come over. We get their time 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 days a week. And they actually get the opportunity to experience what it's like in a government setting or at the Savannah River site and see how their skills that they've developed in the military translate into private industry. So it's a program that we're really positive about and are just starting to see some of the first folks move into it. And then finally, in March, our Forest Service folks, and I can't remember if this was briefed to the full cab or not, but I'll just hit it real quick. One of the concerns we had last year on site was with respect to vehicle safety was deer collisions. There was a large uptick, a significant uptick last year and the year before in the number of car-deer collisions at the Savannah River site. And so the Forest Service came and proposed, and we agreed, that they would have an out-of-season effort to thin the deer, to reduce the deer populations near the highways on the Savannah River site that are the most traveled. And so in March, they used sharpshooters and removed 111 deer from the areas around the main road into the site, from both Aiken and North Augusta. And as a result of that, the state of South Carolina has a requirement that if you get a permit to take a deer out of season, that the meat has to be donated to, a local food bank or something like that. So those 111 deer, all of them were taken, they were surveyed from a radiological standpoint, just like we would in a normal hunt, and all 111 were released to the local food banks for them to provide food for folks that need it. So it was an interesting effort. We'll see if it has the positive results that we're looking for in the fall with the reduced herds around the, because that's when most of the deer collisions happen, is in the fall, while the deer are moving around. That's really about it as far as the activities I wanted to give you an update on. Those are some of the areas that we routinely talk to you guys about, and thank you very much.
Bill, in reference to the active duty selection process, what are the criteria for that program?
Over at Fort Gordon, we're working with their career transition folks over at Fort Gordon to identify soldiers that they have to self-identify and come to and sign up for a workshop that would allow them to participate in this program. And then once we have a resume, then the resumes are sent to us over at the site. We take a look at it and look for potential matches for areas that we need expertise. Cybersecurity, for example. A lot of folks over at the fort know an awful lot about cybersecurity, the cyber command over there and so forth. As those folks are coming out and getting ready to retire, it's a great resource that we can utilize short-term and maybe potentially long-term.
Bill, I want to thank you very much for the update.
You're welcome.
We appreciate your time, and thanks, and we'll welcome you again. Thank you. Okay. We're ready to move to our presentations for this evening. Before we do that, I just want to read into the record that the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee, our next committee meeting will be on June 9th, and it will be at 4:30 p.m. to 6:20 p.m. right here at the new Ellington Community Center. Okay? So with that, we're ready for our first presentation for this evening, and that will be from the Savannah River National Laboratory. We'll get an update, and that's going to be presented by Mr. David Eiler, who is the Deputy Director of the Savannah River Nuclear Lab. So, David.
Good afternoon, and let me know if I'm speaking loud or not speaking loud enough. Hopefully everybody can hear me just fine. So I'm the Deputy Director. Unfortunately, Terry Mikulski, the Director, is in DC. He's up there a lot these days. He's actually the chairman of the Lab Policy Council. The Secretary Moniz reestablished the Lab Policy Council, and Terry's the chairman for this year, so he's out there quite a bit, just trying to, coordinate the efforts of national labs as a whole, not just our lab. So, you have me today. Now, we haven't been a national lab all that long. I mean, the history of the lab, and there's some folks in the back I know certainly speak to that much better than I, because they lived it for many years. But the lab started off, as a lab for the site, and that's what it did for many years. Transitioned to a technology center. 10 years ago, was designated as a national lab, which is a federally funded research and development center, which gives you certain authorities and the ability to do things to provide service to the nation outside, beyond the boundaries of the site in which it's located. And that extends both in terms of what you do within the complex, DOE complex, as well as, internet with businesses or universities, nationally and internationally. So, and we've done a lot in the last 10 years to do that, particularly in the last several years under Dr. McCulsey's leadership. What this picture shows is a celebration we had from that, and it was quite impressive in that we got a lot of, got an entire congressional delegation here. We had, David Klaus, the acting Undersecretary for Management and Performance. We had clearly Dr. Moody there. We also had Dave Huizinga, who at the time was the acting EM1, or head of environmental management. So it was quite a big day for us, because it really marked a recognition of our status as a national lab within the complex of DOE. So quickly, how we look at ourselves. We have about a little over 800 people on staff. It's roughly, a little bit less than half of those are what we call the operations people, just keep the lab running in terms of all the facilities, the maintenance, the radiological protection personnel, our, chemical safety, that sort of thing. And then the other half, or a little bit more than half, is our professional staff, the engineers and scientists that do the research and development. Of those, those most have advanced degrees, about half PhDs, about half master's degrees. So it's pretty impressive staff with the work they do and the breadth of work that they do. We're a little over $200 million, $14 million of revenue, and that's actually increased a little bit. And one thing I will say about our budget, we don't really have a budget like other activities on the site. If you talk nuclear materials or tritium, they have a dedicated budget to do that. We go out and we get revenue. That's the way national labs work. And so with us, about 2/3 almost of our budget is actually national security work. We're an environmental management lab, but we do a lot of work with national security. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. And about half of that is support on-site with the tritium activities or non-proliferation activities that occur on the site, and about half is, frankly, off-site. We work with other, federal agencies. We work with other parts of NNSA, DOE and intelligence group to do work in national security. Within environmental that work, we do about half on the site. We're either supporting nuclear materials or liquid waste. Savannah River remediation, we support those activities, and then about half is offsite. Primarily at Hanford. Our portfolio work at Hanford has grown quite a bit actually in the last several years. We have a small clean energy portfolio. It's not a big part of what we do as a national lab. We do it where it makes sense. That's relatively flat in terms of funding amount. It's not a big growth area for us, but it is an important thing in terms of, what we use that for, quite honestly, is it kind of gets our name out there. A lot of our young scientists and engineers start there. They're very interested in energy. They start doing that work, and then they transition maybe to doing some of our other work. So it's actually a good recruiting. So that makes us a multi-program laboratory, about, over 300 different work activities. That's a challenge for me. I have the business people. We have to track all of that. Every Every activity has to be tracked separately. So when you talk about, Bill mentioned about funding, we have to track very closely every account, what we're authorized to spend in a particular year, what we're authorized to do, all through those over 300 different activities. We do that with a relatively small staff. We spent the last couple of years really thinking about what we do as a national lab. Where do we make a difference? What's our impact to the nation, to the complex? What do we bring to the table that others don't? And that really resulted in us thinking about what are our core capabilities, what are our core competencies, okay? The first one, and probably, most foremost, is our environmental remediation and risk reduction. We chose those words carefully. It's not always about just cleaning up. We're really about risk reduction. So there are some technologies we bring forward in terms of the environmental aspects to maybe do things in situ, contain contaminants rather than try to dig them up. So I'll talk about that in a minute. That's a key thing for us. The second is our knowledge of nuclear materials processing and disposition. There isn't a single process out there that has to do with either tritium or liquid waste or spent fuel. Any of those processes, they're all developed. Those flow sheets are all developed at the lab and tested out to prove that they will work. It's work. The third area is nuclear detection, characterization, and assessments. This is the ability to monitor nuclear materials, either remotely or locally, depending. And this plays into a lot of areas. We do a lot of safeguards work, with International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. For example, how you would monitor nuclear materials movement from a safeguards and accountability standpoint to the support we do in the intelligence world. How you might measure what a particular country is doing with nuclear materials. And finally is our gas processing, storage, and transfer. This really focuses on our tritium work. We are the R&D arm for NSA, so that's an important part of the weapon system. And we've translated that knowledge into some of the things we do in the energy sector, and I'll talk about. So those are our four products, four things that we do that we feel like we offer things that other labs do. Most importantly, we are very proud of our record as the safest national lab. I mean, this is part of the larger posture of the site. Is a very safe site. It's that's a very high focus for the entire site, and that's no different in the lab. The difference in the lab is because you're doing R&D activities, your approach as to how you manage and do work safely differs in a production facility. So we have a separate conduct about research and development manual that tells us how we assess, and plan activities where we do R&D and to do it safely. And so we're pretty proud of that because we do some hazardous work. I mean, that's the nature of the business. And so to be able to plan and think about how to do it safely is incredibly important. We're very proud of our results there. Let me just talk a little bit about the environmental management. And we've been able to show, in our dialogue with EM, that we've actually been able to save them $5 billion. About $2 billion is realized, another $3 billion to go. But it's really bringing advanced technologies, and it's not just here at the site, although a substantial part is at the site, with how you do things, how you can save, or bringing technology to bear. You can only create so much savings by process improvement and doing tweaks. You have to bring innovation to make step changes. And so this is something that has been, really impressed, EM, and they really understand it now. And in fact, it has resulted in Secretary of Energy Advisory Board recommendation to the Secretary about bringing more innovation to the EM portfolio. So that was a significant recognition of the value that this lab does, the value of science and technology is to the EM program. So an example is, we showed these bank of contactors. Well, we were instrumental, although we weren't the only ones, and talk about that a little bit, to bring the advanced or the next generation solvent to the ARPMCU and then ultimately to the salt waste processing facility to increase their throughput. That really was done, that's a model case of how you bring new science and technology to bear on the EM problem. How you increase your salt waste throughput. We've been able to increase, what ARPMCU up to the baseline of SWPF just through that solvent, and we did that in partnership with Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge did the basic chemistry science. We did the applied science. We worked with Parsons, to help field it. So it's really, whenever you're doing this, you really take the team effort because we're an applied science lab. We do some basic R&D, but what we really do is we take science, and understanding and apply it in the field to help people, help bring solutions to bear. And that played out in a couple of places. So at Hanford, they were struggling for years with issues with release of tank vapors to the environment that was having physiological effects on their workers, and they didn't understand why. Okay, and they had a couple of studies done to try to figure it out and figure out what they could do differently. Well, we were asked about last summer to do an independent review, do another review to say, what can we do differently out here? And so we formed a team that, and what was interesting is we kind of took a different approach. Because we have knowledge of tank farms, we have knowledge of that problem. We don't have the same types of releases here at Savannah River site, but we understand the complexity of the chemical matrix. And so we actually built a team of, National Academies level people, including people, a lot of different disciplines. The key one being, believe it or not, epidemiology from a medical standpoint. And we were able to show that, we were able to demonstrate that, the people's effects were being caused by the tank releases. We didn't know why, but that was always a question. Is it really being caused by this, or is it something else? We were able to demonstrate, yes, it was being caused by those releases. And we were able to come with recommendations of how they do the work differently to avoid the exposures. One of the things we found out is the industrial health methods that are traditionally used didn't work in this environment with these short-term releases. So a key thing is to bring knowledge and science to bear to the benefit of the company to solve a long-standing problem. Another one was we just completed we were asked to lead the technical assistance team to look at the reason, the technical basis of why the radiological release occurred at the waste isolation pilot plant. There's an entire accident investigation board that looks at the entire accident. We're just asked to look from a technical standpoint. So so that's the example of how our stature as a national lab has grown, is that we have the complex, the DOE leadership coming to us, asking for us to do this important work for them. The other one that I'd like to point out is, so EM, all the different parts of DOE, including EM, have a minority serving institution program. And we've been asked, because we did the last several years, I've been working with regional, minority institutions to do things, with internships and research projects. We were doing such a good job, they asked us to lead their entire program. So we just started doing that this year. So national security, I mentioned, is a big part of our portfolio. So what do we do? A big part of what we do is we support the tritium program. We are really the only lab right now that really does a lot of current R&D with tritium and its effects on materials. We do a lot of work for the design labs, being Los Alamos and Sandia, to demonstrate that and do new designs, test them out, make sure the designs that we have work, that they're functioning properly over, over the life cycle of the weapon system. And that has expanded itself into other things. This unit here on the left you see is actually a unit that we provided to the University of Rochester, so that they can use tritium for some medical isotope work. Okay, we're actually working with companies up in Wisconsin that are also doing similar efforts. Okay, so our tritium expertise is actually grown into other things. We do some work with the International ITER project, the fusion project, for the tritium, tritium off gas for that. So our national security work is really important, but the primary focus is, of course, support the deterrent for the country. We operate the mobile plutonium facility. So this is a facility that's actually capable of, receiving, characterizing, and packaging nuclear materials, specifically plutonium, in a country where, let's just say, they're not really able to handle it. Okay, so if there's an event that has occurred where, you need to go get material and they don't really have the capability, it's a relatively short fuse scenario, you can fly this thing somewhere. You can load this, it's basically in these sea lane containers, put it on an airplane, you fly somewhere, you set it up, and you start operations. So what this shows is actually we did a cold weather test with this about this time last year. I was in Alaska. With this, visiting, seeing how we were doing with this thing. Now I was only there for a day, and that was actually a relatively nice day for Fairbanks, Alaska. I got off lucky. The rest of the team was dealing with minus 38 degrees, for weeks on end, to demonstrate that you can operate in that environment. The previous 2 years before, we operated in Nevada in the summer to demonstrate that it could be done in high temperature. We do this in partnership with Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge operates the mobile uranium facility. So there's actually been retrievals like this of uranium, but none of it is done with plutonium yet. But anyway, that's a capability that we operate as a lab for the country. And that's an NSA program. We use our knowledge of nuclear processes to help different agencies analyze the event signatures. I can't get into any details on that. But one that did come up, for example, was when the tsunami and subsequent reactor accident occurred at Fukushima. As that release occurred, we were able to advise and figure out how to, NSA, about how you would monitor the release that was coming from that event. That's just an example. And finally, we operate the FBI's only radiological capable laboratory. So the way that works is we operate the facility, we train the agents on how to do things in a radiological environment. And so when a case does occur, the FBI agents can come in, they're fully qualified, they have all the clearances, we just set them up, and they can come in and we can do full forensics, fingerprints, hair analyses, DNA, all that kind of stuff that they do for a criminal investigation for something that's contaminated with a radioactive contaminant. We've done, some real cases. We've also done some major exercises with them, and they're pretty happy with us, and we're actually expanding that capability here in the next couple of years. In terms of clean energy, we operate the Center for Hydrogen Research for the National Lab, for DOE rather. That hydrogen, all of the energy business is somewhat variant. Okay, it really it just occurred to me. I'm hoping my slides match yours because I thought there was something earlier that kind of illustrated that. But anyway, I hope we're not missing something here. But so the area of energy, it changes a lot in terms of prices of oil, with the natural gas that's being removed from the ground in this country. It's hard to predict, but so hydrogen has been up and down in terms of the interest level of what hydrogen brings. But I think there has been steady interest over the years in that, so we're continuing to do there. We're also doing a lot of work with natural gas. So natural gas is becoming a bigger player. We're partnered with the American Gas Association to try to develop different approaches to natural gas. We're doing a lot of R&D work with in partnership with Ford, BASF, UC Berkeley to develop solid state natural gas storage for vehicles. That's kind of leveraging what we do with tritium. We do a little bit of work with nuclear fuel research, not a lot. That's primarily a venue of Idaho National Lab, but we do some where it makes sense for us. And we do a lot of work with smart grid. Where our play is what this picture shows, maybe not clearly here, but hopefully in the handout you can see it better. is we do a lot of stuff with high current. So, because of that kind of an outgrowth, we actually have a prime standard for high current. And that comes into our rolling that we do for tritium. But as a result of being able to do that, we do get a lot of electrical engineering knowledge of how you have high current components. So we've actually partnered with Clemson down at the drivetrain test facility in Charleston, okay? And this is a facility that tests wind turbines, okay? But they create a lot of electricity. A lot of electricity has to go somewhere. So created this place to put the load, as electrical engineers call it. Well, why not create an entire testing network, test components off grid? Because that's something the utilities really struggle with. They have these new components, these smart grid components, but they're reluctant to test them out here because if it fails, it might cause a blackout. But if we can stick it in one of these, someplace, power it, and then we can run all kinds of transients off grid, simulate conditions that we'll never see maybe in real life until some real problem happens 15 years down the road, to see how it would work, how it would respond. So we do some work with smart grid, but again, we're applying our knowledge of expertise to things that make sense. And finally, we do some solar research. Now, we're not the sun people. Okay, what we do is material science. Okay, so some of the solar applications, what you literally do is you take and you focus sun energy and you melt salt. Okay, and then you use that to drive turbines. Well, we know about molten salt because guess what? That's what DWPF does. Okay, DWPF is a molten salt. We know how it corrosion. We know that science. So where it makes sense, we apply our knowledge to help out in that area. So this is actually one of our researchers getting an award here. As a young researcher award for the state of South Carolina here just a couple weeks ago. Brendan Garcia Diaz here with the Lieutenant Governor. So we work internationally. I mentioned Fukushima. So a couple of years ago, the then Deputy Secretary Poneman suggested to TEPCO, which is the utility, and the Japanese government, that they get some help from our national labs on how they might approach dealing with their problems. And he specifically suggested Savannah River, Pacific Northwest National Lab. So we partnered with P&L to help TEPCO, and we're actually on our second contract, approaching our third, to help TEPCO with what's your overall strategy, how you might seal off some of the groundwater and the leakage from the reactors, how do you deal with the wastewater that's been collected over the years since the accident, and moving forward the strategy of that. We're not there to do the cleanup ourselves. We're there to help them develop technology and approaches. And really, they get a lot of pitches. Okay, they get a lot of people coming in and saying, "You do it this way, you do it this way." We bring an independent, science-based knowledge because we've actually done it. We have sealed off reactors. We've grouted them in place. We have cleaned up nuclear waste. We've dealt with groundwater. We know how to do it. And so they trust us to help advise them and develop the strategies. In terms of technical assistance, so that picture shows us we provide assistance to countries. So there are some countries that want to return plutonium, and they do have the capability, they have the resources to do it, but maybe they've lost their expertise. Okay, so a couple years ago, we brought some material back from Sweden. Okay. This is a non-proliferation issue. It's really a national security issue. And so there was a part of an agreement, that President Obama had, that, we would, at the National Security Summit, that this material would come back, but they lost their expertise. In fact, the only person they could find that even remembered handling this material was in the 70s. And, we had to go to him and try to understand, okay, well, how was this material left? Because they really had forgotten what they had. So we helped advise them, how do you characterize it? How do you package it? How do you make it package it to our standards so we can bring it back and meet our requirements? So that's what we do. We do work in terms of nuclear packaging. That's both within the DOE complex. We've recently entered with the Work for Others contract with a Norwegian company to help advise them in developing some of their nuclear packages. So where it makes sense, we have a lot of knowledge, and we can we've been asked to do this, you know, both within the complex and internationally. And finally, this lower right picture is a team that developed some inline measurements of safeguards that could be done to monitor nuclear processes. You know, rather than, you know, so that this is actually done work for the IAEA, and that was equipment that we were testing in H Canyon, because we have a facility that actually does it, so we can demonstrate its utility. So we work with companies in about 24 straight states here, you know, in the United States, through cooperative research and development agreements, and there are other agreements that we have, 10 of them in South Carolina. So of our portfolio, about $24 million or so is actually work for non-DOE entities, stuff like that, or non-federal. I say non-federal entities. So with companies, universities, that sort of thing. And so this is what we're about. We're about you know, helping deal with national challenges, and that's what a national lab is supposed to do. We're pretty proud of the fact that we've made a lot of progress in the last several years. You know, Bill talks about funding and the uncertainty of funding, and that's true for everybody. It's true for us. But I guess the one thing that we have, you know, that's a benefit to us is when we had FY12, when we had a big downturn on the site, or we were dealing with some issues with the way that the budget was set up, I guess. It affected the lab, but not as much, because we have a more diverse portfolio of funding. Because we do get a fair amount of our funding from, not just from the site. But then on the other hand, you know, we have to be a little bit hungry, because we have to go find, you know, and bring solutions to bear, you know, to some of these national challenges, figure out where we can help. And then, okay, and how we can help, and we do it at a cost competitive rate that customers are willing to pay. So that's what national labs do. That's been the big shift for us. Okay, and you know, in terms of both our people understand that, and the people on the site understand that, and people within the complex understand what value we have. It's really what's nice is we're not a billion-dollar lab. We're small enough to be a little bit agile. Okay, we're big enough that we really add value. We can have enough people and with expertise to have an impact. We're small enough to be agile, to respond to customer needs. And that's actually what we hear a lot, is that we are very, very responsive. And we listen to the customers and try to bring solutions to them. And that plays to our advantage, you know, frequently. I think that's my last slide. So, any questions? Yeah.
Actually, I have two. So I think you just touched on the last one, on your last part. So how did y'all capitalize on what you do? So when you go out, like with Sweden, and you do all of your work, are you able to keep that money at the lab, or do you have to send half of it away in taxes? Like, do you get to keep that money that you've earned and use that to fund new projects and new developments, or does it go into just one giant coffer? Okay.
You know, when I took this job about 3.5 years ago, I didn't know I was going to have to become an accountant, but I basically have, kind of. So the way it works, we operate on full cost recovery. So when we go to do work for anybody, we basically charge a rate that covers all of our costs. So that's not just the cost of the work, but it's also the overhead costs to support our people, overhead costs to support our facilities. And then you mentioned, like, I think the words you used were like new ideas or new programs. So there is a small tax. It's actually, and it's not just us, all the national labs do this. It's called a Laboratory Research and Development, Library Directors Research and Development Funds. And so what that does is it's small. We operate at 4%. Congress allows us to go up to 8%, although in this next fiscal year it's got 6%. And so basically that's an adder, so we can use that money to do R&D for trying to build new or different capabilities. Mm-hmm. Okay. But that's how we do it. And in terms of, when you say capitalization, you know, that usually means infrastructure to me, you know, that's built within our overhead. okay? And it's a little more complicated than that for us, but that's basically, it's an overhead. Most of our operations and maintenance are covered through an overhead rate, which is part of that full cost recovery, thing. Now, there are specific, by the accounting rules, to do new projects, okay? To do new projects, you have to use a different source of money usually, but, that's basically, does that help? Does that
You
answer
did,
your question?
and then the
Okay.
only other question I had was on slide 6 with the mobile plutonium
Yep.
facility. When was the last time you got to use that?
So the mobile,
in practice?
okay, well, mobile plutonium facility has never been used, has never gone hot,
Okay.
okay?
I was wondering.
And actually, neither is the mobile uranium facility. When Oak Ridge did what they've done, like in Chile and Libya, they didn't have a facility. They just sort of went and were able to retrieve the material, and they just brought equipment. So neither have gone hot, so there's never been a case where we've been told to deploy this yet, and there are certain scenarios where we think that it might be used, but the conditions have come to pass.
And nerve-wracking.
Well, the challenge with it is you have, what we have to do is it's not purely a lab run thing. We actually draw upon people, that work in the other facilities on the site, particularly in the HV line, glove box operation. It's frankly a glove box operation. So you bring in glove box operators, you bring, maintenance people, you're basically putting a facility together and testing it. So it's required a pretty broad team. And so we draw upon the entire site to support this. And it's worked, but, you have a certain notice time. And frankly, the real concern that I have is when you go to field it, now you're probably going to be there for us, on these tests, it's been a few weeks, and you're probably going to be there for months. And so we've talked about how we sustain those folks for that long in a remote location. It could be, and frankly, we're going to require military support just for logistics, to do it.
Thank
Sure.
you.
You mentioned the research you do in hydrogen as well as solar. Does SR&L employ any of those technologies to produce power for their facilities or equipment?
No. Now, I will tell you, there's some proposals out there, not just for us, but, partnership with, SC&G and stuff to kind of do that. Maybe not just for SR&L, but for the site. But those are still just in the proposal stage. There are actually some things we're responding to maybe do something like that. But no, we don't do anything, where we, power ourselves in that way. I mean, we're on the R&D side. We're not in the production, make something big at an actual plant or anything like that. Yeah.
One other question. With any large laboratory, with hoods and things like that, you're producing waste, radiological waste, as well as probably hazardous waste. What happens to the waste that go down the drains in your laboratory?
Pretty much basically it goes down the drain and it flows into some tanks. We have a facility where we monitor that tanks and actually pump it in tankers and it goes out to H-Canyon. And from there it gets evaporated or part of the liquid waste system. That's what we do. So basically it's a transfer over to a different part of the site. We don't remediate those wastes that we do generate locally. That's the liquid waste. Solid waste, we package, and that goes either to low-level waste or whatever the appropriate waste stream is. In terms of chemical waste, we package that. We work through our solid waste facility at the site to disposition solid chemical waste. Except for our operations, we have some labs that are off-site. There we have a separate contract currently with Clean Harbors, and they take that chemical waste from us. So it's all pretty much using the site policy.
The tank that captures your liquid waste, is it monitored for leaks?
Oh yeah, and we monitor leaks. We do periodic inspections. In fact, I didn't personally go down, but I watched us do the inspection the last time we did it was last summer. And we actually, made entries and do that non-destructive evaluation of it. So we monitor them. In fact, we have a project right now to install, some remote cameras in there, or upgrade. The cameras we had failed. We're going to go ahead and install new ones and upgrade them. So actually, I reviewed the pilot project that, kind of go do all of the dimensionals to make sure it all works. So yeah, we do active monitoring of those.
So you detected no leaks?
No leaks. I don't know.
Have those tanks ever leaked?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, there's been a long history, so I can't, but not to my knowledge, that's not happened. Those particular things. Not leaked. Yes, sir.
One question, on slide 5, you talked about, SRNL, leading initiatives with the, waste isolation pilot plant. Of course, the CAB heard a presentation at our last full board meeting about the contamination problems in WIP. And, I know you were so heavily involved with Fukushima, in Japan, and helping them with their contamination problems. Is SRNL really, how involved are you?
Well, so.
Trying to get WIP back online again?
Okay, well, there's two things we've done. One, our effort so far was primarily focused on trying to help figure out why this occurred. So we did two basic things. One is we led the team to try to look at the chemical reactions that may have occurred, okay, or it likely occurred, I should say, probably better wording. And then we also did actually develop, they called it Project Reach, was basically putting a remote camera on a big arm to reach out because he couldn't get in there, actually inspect the area to try to figure out what happened. So that's what we've done so far. Now, actually, I just, got an email today, looking at, okay, is there some way we can help based on what we've learned to know about how they look at their ventilation system design, or redesign. So we're looking at that. Can we help? And, and maybe we can, maybe we can't. That might actually be something more in line with our site engineering organization, but there are some insights we may have. So I've just started pulsing the people that led that team to see, is there some knowledge we can help look at in terms of that respect. But as far as beyond that, we haven't, we aren't currently engaged in the recovery yet. I hope we will be, but that hasn't come to pass yet. And I say that with caveat, there's always discussions going on that I'm not aware of, I'm just a deputy director. But seriously, we have people that are busy all the time trying to figure out how can they help. And so there might be something happening. That's what I'm aware of as of today. Yes, sir.
Just, before you start, I just want to mention that, this committee, we're running a little bit beyond, our agenda time allotted for this presentation. So, this will be, like, no, we'd like to, last question for this presentation.
You mentioned customers. Can you give me an idea of who are customers?
Okay, well, clearly DOE is a big customer. NNSA, both, so they, it's the government, so they're going to use acronyms and abbreviations. So like NA10, which is the defense programs, that's the tritium work, that's a big customer for us. NA20, which is the non-proliferation arm, that's a big customer for us. We do a little bit of work with NA42, which is our people that do like emergency response, that sort of thing. And there's other parts of NA20 that also do safeguards. So that's kind of, and a big thing. Then we also do some work with DOE intelligence, okay, DOE-IN. So that's kind of the DOE spectrum. And then we do work, like clearly the FBI, Department of Homeland Security. There are some other agencies which I can't tell you. We do work with the military, like Special Operations Command. We do work with them. Let's see, I'm missing something.
You got that. That was the gist I was looking for. And I know we're running short on time, but when you talked about non-proliferation and clean energy, and I saw how it's broken up, thank you for that. But does that fall under environment? Does some of that cross over to environmental stewardship, or is that completely separate?
Generally speaking, as a business line, it's separate. There is some bleed over. Okay, so we will have people that work both programs. Okay, because there might be somebody that's an expert in how you deal with, like our environmental stewardship might deal with the nuclear materials on site. But then again, they might also help with non-proliferation activities. They might also help, you know, with some other things that, you know, in nuclear fuel.
And that's where you're counting.
So like Brenda Garcia Diaz, the one you saw the picture of, she works in all of those. She just happened to get the, you know, I mentioned her in solar, but, you know, I know she's done, I talked to her about, you know, she's working some pretty cool stuff with used fuel, you know, some pretty cool stuff with, it's all, material science and some other things. I mean, you know, so that's the thing about small lab. We have to be a little bit nimble. People kind of flow back and forth and they talk to each other and they help each other out, wherever it makes sense. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
David, I want to thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to ask this committee, before we move on to the next presentation, do you all feel that this presentation is worthwhile to bring to the full board meeting in Savannah?
I do. Is there a reason that we can't keep our?
Yes, they're not approved for public dissemination.
Yes, we just put there's a new reviewing procedure that's been put into place at headquarters, and there was a mix-up between the slides getting them out. So the hard copies weren't the approved version that can be put out.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were extra slides in there. Well,
Helpful to know that before you start writing all of your notes.
yeah, does
We weren't aware of
committee,
it.
this committee agree that we should bring this presentation forward to the full board meeting in May? Okay. And so the slide presentation will be available at that meeting in May?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay, our next presentation is the SRS Cold War Preservation Program Update. That's going to be presented by Mary Beth Reed from New South Associates. So please welcome Mary Beth. Thank you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I am Mary Beth Reed, a historian with New South. I've been working on site since 1997, which is the longest project our company has been involved with. We're very proud of our work here. Our program is managed by Prado Mate with DOE and Andy Albanese, SRS. I'm very happy to introduce my cohort, Melissa Jolly, who is our curator, and I know you'll be hearing from her at future meetings like this. She's just getting in. She's really new, well, maybe a year into this. So I'm going to talk about three things, which is basically why we have a Cold War Historic Preservation Program, to refresh people's memories of what we're all about. Second thing, because we're early in the year, we're going to talk about what we did in 2014, and then finally talk about our objectives for 2015. For those of you who aren't in the know, the establishment of the program comes about through the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, where Lyndon Johnson signed into law this act, which actually asks the federal government to consider the undertaking to actually look to see what historic resources they stored, one, and two, to consider their undertakings and their impact upon those historic resources. At Savannah River site, and this also came along with that recognition that the site turned 50 in 2000. Also, there was the idea that we have historic buildings, structures, things that need to be saved. And DOE started to take that into account and began an inventory process. Out of that inventory process, and you guys have been a lot around as well too, you know there was a pretty frenzied D&D period at this point in time. To enable to handle the D&D process and its impact on the historic buildings at Savannah River site, DOE elected to have a programmatic agreement, which kind of standardized how we would treat these historic properties, figure out what made them significant, and then preserve that quality. In most cases, that ended in a demolition, but at the same time, many of the buildings were documented fully, photographed, and in some cases, their histories are now in the Library of Congress. Oh, let me go back on. I lied about that. So basically, this programmatic agreement also set the guidelines for what we do as a program. And we identify facilities for preservation, we write histories, we collect and manage artifacts, and finally, we provide public outreach. And I'm going to go through those four sort of commitments for 2014 and kind of give you an idea of what we did last year. we've done a good job on our inventory for the Cold War properties. I gotta tell you, we haven't found any new ones for the last couple of years, which is good. We did our job, but we are always on the lookout, and sometimes they do happen. We had one maybe 3 years ago, which was, we're very lucky. A DOE gentleman in his office turned around, looked out in B area, looked out into the parking lot, said, called me up, said, Mary Beth, what is that thing? And I went, I have no, we've walked over it. How many times? It was seeing it from an aerial position. It was actually from the anti-aircraft period, where there was a logo painted into the parking lot. So that was one new one, and we're very pleased that we caught it and photographed it. Very cool. So we have our district, considered a historic district. The Savannah River site, if you think of it as a property, it's like a machine. It's built to do things, processes. It was laid out in a certain way, and that also made it historically significant. In terms of documentation, I talked a little bit about this. We have completed 7 thematic studies on each major processes for the Savannah River site, and they are published online, just so you know, at the website down here, and we can get that to you if anybody wants to take a look. But the State Historic Preservation Office has put them in their entirety on their website for dissemination. We also have them in the Aiken Library as well. We make sure of that every time we put one out. 2014, we actually put out the separation study. That was a 2-year study. It's called Bringing It to Form. We're very proud to have that done and going. Tonight couldn't be any better for me because we're starting a new thematic study, which is research and development. And to hear about the labs and what they're doing now is very important for my understanding. Curation. If you haven't been to our curation facility, we invite you to come on over and take a look at the artifacts that we've collected over time. I talked about many of the buildings were demolished. That's true. But the important artifacts were retrieved from those buildings and are saved in 315M for future generations to better understand some of the innovative things that happen at SRS, to better understand the processes that were involved. This is Melissa's bailiwick, so if you have questions, I'm going to point to her in a few minutes. So in 2014, we accepted several artifacts, aerial photographs, and just in early 2015, a very large collection of tank models we're very pleased to have found. We have done inventory and cataloging of document boxes, and we assess the condition of the artifacts. What do they look like? How are they doing? You know, temperature, humidity, all these things have an impact. Public outreach is very much a part of the National Historic Preservation Act, and really, we do a great job here at Savannah River Site in contacting the public about what we do and heritage tourism. We have partnered with SRS communications team to do Throwback Thursdays. Melissa finds old photographs, tags them out, and then people get to see a little bit of the past. You know, it's a great program. We hosted 7 tours of the curation facility, and that includes the veterans curation lab folks coming over from Augusta, mentoring groups, and interns. We have new people coming all the time, and we love the attention. Finally, we organize 4 heritage tourism meetings a year. One of the things in programmatic agreement was that SRS would bring together people in the CSRA, groups, agencies, museums, who had an interest in interpreting the past. And this has been one of the, really what I consider the major contribution of that programmatic agreement. It is working. People come together. They talked about, all right, there's not a lot of funding, so what do we do? What does SRS have that can help that next person? What do those folks have that can help us and make us better understand how this important area evolved? And what we do here is we have one tomorrow, so you can hear me getting ready for it, because it's always a lot of fun. We're going to be in the Train Museum in Aiken, and I think we have about 12 to 15 partners that show up to talk. It's really a great event. Last year, Melissa did a good job. She got us all out to Plant Vogel for one of the best tours you can get for a commercial reactor site. It gave us a better perspective on the historic production areas that we see or have seen at Savannah River Site. But the first thing is camera, cooling towers, and we're on a nuclear site. That's very different from SRS, as you well know, as we picked up all these papers and gave back. So that was a very cool thing, and we learned so much that day. And I would tell anybody who can, please make a tour. Those guys just did an incredible job that day. Compliance. We keep DOE in compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act. you know, taking a look at their undertakings, making sure we have the right training, you know, keeping the public outreach element going. And we also are working on an update to our cultural resource management plan. In 2015, this is where we're going. We're going to move forward on our R&D study. That means oral history, finding the historic photography at the site that matters in looking at that one area. We're going to do documentation of the building, and we're going to do research. It's going to be a 2-year study. We're just starting, so it's a great time. As I said, following the last speaker, it really makes sense. Melissa is spearheading an internship program. Savannah Riverside has an incredible collection of historic photographs. DuPont thought what they were doing was historic, and their methodology, and you know, they got those photographers out there to collect that history, and it's really captured in that collection. But that collection needs help. I mean, it was taken in the 1950s. It's been stored in various ways by different records managers. Now it's time to take a look at it, get them out of the acidic, you know, the negatives out of their acidic envelopes, digitize the collection per se, and put it in the proper storage. So we are going to get interns. We're working with site photo services, and we're really pleased to launch this. This is something that is going to be so important to the history of South Carolina, let alone the region. I think these photographs are just tremendously important. We are engaging new partners. Like tomorrow, we're getting new partners that I've never seen before, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see what happens at the train museum. Working with SRS Heritage Foundation, we have the 2 founders back there, Walt and Paula Joseph. If you guys are in the know, you know things are happening at that Dibble building, okay? And greater things are going to happen. And we are trying to work with them to get information, material, artifacts as they grow, and we grow with them. So this is a major part of our program. And finally, we need to provide assistance to DOE as they change, think about their mission, and how that is going to affect those historic resources they steward today. So I'm very pleased to have given the update. I know I talk pretty fast. I'm from the Northeast. But if you have any questions, please yell. And again, if you folks would like to come to the curation facility at any time, we will be delighted to give you a tour. Thank you.
Do you do any work with the Aiken County Museum? Because I say that when I moved here 7 years ago, I didn't even know the site was there. And I went to the museum, and I found that the best part of the museum was the part on the relocation of New Ellerton and the like. And it is in like this dank, dark corner in the basement, and it's the best part of the museum.
Well,
and it really needs to be put on the main floor and expanded, because I found it absolutely fascinating, and they don't give it nearly enough attention.
well, you are singing Walt Joseph's song. Let me put that.
I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. The gentleman in the back. They are putting together a list now in separate museum context. You're absolutely right. Within the historical museum, it's always been a sideline. I mean, they have a lot of history to capture. Aiken is very rich, the heritage of Aiken County and the whole region. But yeah, SRS was a game changer for the area. And these folks at the Heritage Foundation have been working really years diligently to bring that story into a space where it can truly be told on its own merits, because it is. It is probably one of the most important stories in South Carolina's 20th century history. So I would, Walt, you want to? I think you do need to talk. But I would tell you it's coming. They have come, but I agree with you, and it just didn't do the site justice at all, did it? No. We'll see. It's going to be good. Yes, sir.
David Hoyle, Cab. On page 6, you have a statement there that says, at least part of SRS is considered a National Register eligible Cold War Historic District. Do I take that to mean that there is nothing on the site that's on the National Register now? Nothing.
The way the National Historic Preservation Act works, okay? You can be listed on the register, which is, you know, as you guys are all used to the historic districts in your towns, but being listed on the National Register district. A federal agency can choose not to list, but if it is found that they have eligible buildings, they are treated as if they are listed. Okay?
Are you telling me that DOE has decided not to list?
DOE has decided not to list.
Why is that?
Okay. Now, I'm a preservation professional, and I'm going to tell you from the day I walked out into the public, people are scared of the National Register of Historic Places. I'm not saying that's DOE's case. I'm just speaking from my experience. People feel that the National Historic, being listed means people tell you what to do with your properties. You must hear this in your home districts, I'm sure. But in actuality, the National Historic, having a National Historic District is all carrot, no stick. That's what I call it, unless you're a federal agency. And that's the truth of the matter, that it pushes federal agencies, state agencies, to have to consider the impact of their project, of their planning on those buildings, on the site, whatever that is. So many federal agencies choose not to do a final nomination, but prefer just to do what we call underneath Section 106, it's considered eligible, which is equivalent in its treatment to a listed site. The only difference is a piece of paper, a nomination that would be in Columbia. Let me put it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's upsetting, but it makes sense.
It is truly a historic place.
Yeah, it should be preserved.
I know that. And I think DOE knows that too. I think DOE's been incredibly good in understanding how much artifacts talk to history. Really, I mean, some of the building models we have, as I said, the photography, we have some really marvelous artifacts. We can't wait for them to open and get the protocols that are all needed before you start exchanging federal property over to a institution. I mean, those things are all in the works. But one, as I said, federal agencies really feel leery about going that final step, and it's very few and far between does it happen. Unless it's a landmark building. In other words, one that's even up here. You know, there's just a little bit more.
I've been to your curation facility. It's way cool.
Oh, good. Listen here. Well, please come back again. No, I'm glad to hear that.
Very good. Bob Dorcat. I'm curious about the downtown Aiken, is the Savannah River or SRS Learning Center. Is that what you call it? The Learning Center?
It's going to be the SRS Heritage Museum.
Heritage.
Yes.
Oh, there's the Heritage Museum.
I was actually wondering what the name was too. It took me a minute. I think SRS Heritage Museum?
SRS Museum.
SRS Museum. They even went shorter.
But then
Did it on the side.
the pictures that you talked about before, where would those be displayed then?
Well, DOE has, first of all, we have to digitize them and get them stored. That's #1. That's our first priority. Then the second thing would be is, do we ask DOE on their Cold War site to actually have like a gallery, a digital gallery? I think that would be pretty cool. We have given as many photographs, if they're publicly released, they may use them, and we make sure that happens.
These pictures aren't classified anymore, are they?
No. Don't even go there. It's very hard being a historian in this milieu. I do my best, huh? But yeah, no. I think I can see two things happening. I can see a digital gallery coming up. It's going to be interesting to see the other sites and what they do with their historic, because you have Hanford developed by DuPont. DuPont had input at Oak Ridge, and you see this incredible collection that they created. DuPont had each company that was part of the construction era do a history, which is kind of funny because they're engineers writing history. They really did a good job. I mean, I can pick stuff out now, and it's very fascinating to me. Also, the guys on the project created work diaries, day by day, what we did at Savannah Riverside. It's incredible in terms of the documentation. So I can see over time, DOE wanting to put that information out there, and the web may be a great tool for them to do that. I hope. And also the museum as well.
I guess the museum is, fully funded and functional, Paul?
Fully funded and functional. The museum is a work in progress. We are raising funds for capital improvement as we speak. We have a 5-year capital campaign going on in conjunction with two other museums in Aiken, the African American Cultural and Heritage Center and the Railroad Museum and Visitor Center. We're raising that money, so we're not fully funded. The building is owned and will continue to be owned and operated by Aiken County. A very good deal. We operated in conjunction with the Aiken County Historic.
The money is all private money too. Yeah, there's no government money coming in.
Well, that's the Bob Dorcat. That was another question I was gonna have, because I think this committee, we've heard this presentation before, and I think, we raised a question about, are there any grants available from, SRS to help support the, community, legacy prison, museum and so forth in Aiken? And I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of not into that conversation. In terms of being a historian, I'm not more on the worker bee side. But I'm thinking over time that that's going to happen. That there has to be communication about what the site wants to see in that museum as well. I feel like that's going to be a conversation that's going to evolve. I think the first thing is these folks are going to open their door, and then people are going to go, wow, this is what we've been missing, right? And then I'm hoping that people come to the forefront to say, we want to sponsor this, or do you understand me? People start understanding that the importance of those materials and that story getting out to the public. And I think at that point, then we are going to see more, I hope, funding coming through.
Well, then, Bob Dorcat again, one final question, actually for Walter and Joe. Is there any public funding available for your museum and the work that you're doing in the community, or have you ever heard about any? Is there anything that CAB could do in particular support what you're doing in the community?
Walter's the founder of this foundation. He calls all the time. I'm on their board. Chairman of the board. And you can say, correct me what I say. DOE right now is strapped for money. You're going to hear it as long as you're on this board. There's not enough money to do everything that has to be done, and it's a matter of priority. But DOE's been very cooperative. I mean, they've got the center set up. They're working with us. We're going through all the bureaucratic stuff about getting pieces transferred from the site to the museum. I invite you all to come to the museum. I mean, we're going to have some soft openings in the next few months.
For this group, we can definitely have it.
Anytime you guys, a committee or as individuals, the full cast, we can take you through it. Right now, it's a building, it's 2 stories, not real big. Basically, it's got pictures in it now, but we can give you the concept of what it is and what it will be. It always is small, so we're not going to get a lot of the big stuff that you've seen over at the plant. It just won't fit. But DOE, Dave Moody, the present manager, he can't commit and make promises that are in concrete. But he is said the intent of DOE is to, as funds become available and they open some kind of a welcome center near the site. It'll probably be in that county-owned area where some of the hydrogen research is going on. That they will allocate a significant amount of space in that building if it's ever built to put some of the bigger things that you can't possibly get down in the Aiken. Again, I'm emphasizing DOE is extremely cooperative. They are limited by funds, and the foundation, through all of efforts, they've done a great job of this big campaign going on in Aiken now, where they're trying to get funds for the 3 museums: the Foundation Museum, the Railroad Museum, and the African Heritage Museum. But those other 2 already exist. The Railroad Museum is in operation. The Heritage, the African Cultural Center, that's about ready to come in.
we're getting there. We'll take money as anybody has. This is what we got. We do apply for grants. Yeah, Walt does a great job at that. And we got lots of 5,000 here, 10,000 there. But if you can convince the OE, we'll love that.
Wolf and Joe, thank you very much for bringing this up, this community up to date on your efforts to start that museum.
But when you guys get a break, even if it's on groups of 2 or 3, I mean, somebody can
glad to
offer
have
it. You guys show you what we got.
Whether we're open officially or not.
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if the story has been told about the sacrifice that many of the workers made on the site. Has that story been, I mean, I'm not real familiar with all of the history, but certainly many of the workers there were exposed to levels of radiation that today would not be acceptable. I mean, we know the impact on the environment, much of that, we see that. But has that story been told?
The Savannah River Archaeological Research Program has done a great job at looking at the pre-federal communities and that landscape. We take on the history from the Cold War on, to be honest with you. I will say that every time I have to make a decision about preservation, about building, I bring that value into my decision-making. People, we did a brochure at one point in time, and there was a nurse that worked in Washington with vets, and she reconstructed face. You know, it was really desperate, hard surgery. And she was from Ellington. And when she came home from her service, she was sitting in front of, it was Christmas time, and they got the announcement. You know, she was preparing with her family. She just came home. And she is the person I think about a lot of ways. This is plain. It took me a minute, sorry. But she said to herself, gee, what, all these people gave their lives for our country. Can't I give up my land? Can't I give up my house? And that patriotism really, we have to think about that when we tell this story, because it's incredible, These people gave so much, and they always need to be recognized. As I said, as a value in decision-making about historic properties, as a value in any museum, it just has to be there. It's central, They gave up so much for us to make this happen. So I might not have answered your question fully. If you're interested in some of the community histories, Melissa can get them for you.
I'm talking about the workers, not the people that were displaced and gave up their homes and all of that. I'm talking about the sacrifice. There definitely are sacrifices that the workers made because we didn't know what we know today. Right. That is what I'm wondering. I mean, the construction, there must have been, the construction of the site was amazing. They did it so rapidly. There must have been injuries there. I know that the workers were exposed to levels, I believe, that we wouldn't accept today. Maybe we did, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that.
Yeah. There is a history there, and we try in these CMAC studies, like in heavy water, there were folks that died, and those are treated in. But remember, DuPont, the whole ethic there was the lesson learned. That safety culture, it started from day one, and those accidents or those levels, things that you're talking about, I think you have to consider that. There was as a historian, there's a group of us that started, and we kind of looked at that safety culture when we came in, like, we'll see. And boy, did we. We really did. That's one thing we did learn. DuPont was, and the AEC here, they were safety conscious from the get-go. And I do think that every effort was made within the best practices of the day. Yeah, that's what I would say that, to make sure everyone was safe. But yes, in our histories, we bring out those things. I mean, you have to show that. You have to, when you look at the site, that's an important part of its history. Yes, very much so. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. This time, our committee agenda includes some committee discussion, followed by some public comment, and then this meeting needs to end at 6:20 p.m. so that we have a few minutes break before the next meeting starts. I was just going to open up the committee discussion, again, hearing about the SRS Heritage Museum in Aiken. I don't know if this committee would have any interest, when it's at the right time to, we have scheduled twice a year. Harold, is that correct? Twice a year we do, site visits to SRS. We've never, historically, we're always on the SRS site. I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity to visit the SRS Heritage Museum in Aiken, when say Walt and Joe feel it's ready.
Yeah, but if anybody must get a hold of Walter myself, somebody will be there.
Does anybody else in the committee have any feeling about that?
No, I love it.
I think it's a good idea, yeah.
Okay, so it seems to
Has
be.
the committee or the CAM ever visited the curation facility on site?
No. No,
No, I'd like that too.
yes.
Well, that's an eye opener. You gotta go see that.
Okay, I would agree with that as well.
Well, let's just have one of your full CAD meetings pretty easily. You're gonna have your meetings here from now on. Take an hour and a half.
Okay, that's an idea. Okay, well, I think, as a matter of record then, this committee agrees that they would like to, excuse me, David, again,
Curation.
Visit the SRS curation facility, which is on site.
curation facility on site, and also the SRS Heritage Museum is ready in Aiken. I'd like to try to schedule that into the site tours. So, Harold, I don't know if that's handled by you or.
Yeah, we can pass it on to the, support team as an action item.
Okay.
Let's see the bill.
It was brought up before, but we ran out of, well, it wasn't funds, I think it's schedule. They asked what we wanted to see.
I'd like to take a different tour instead.
Yeah. And it was considered.
Well, we're making a suggestion. Obviously, there's logistical issues in being on-site, off-site, and so forth, but, if the CAF support team could take a look at that as far as, something we could do. We do have some other time to discuss committee, affairs. I do want to ask, would we like Mary Beth Reed's presentation to be presented to the full board meeting, in May in Savannah? Do we agree?
Yeah, there's a lot of new board members, and because of that, I think it would be appropriate.
Yep. And you're
I can't
exactly right.
remember how long ago it was, but I think we had Joe, didn't you come, or maybe it was Walt, the full board meeting and kind of tag team this presentation?
Yeah, it was probably a year, 18 months ago.
There was a little mini one that went with this, remember, they had,
Yeah, they brought some stuff in.
yeah, it was about 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm wondering if there's time, if Joe would mind, or Walt, to come and maybe add to this about the center, at the museum.
Yeah, somebody could do it, depends on when you have it and who's available.
Because we had a really good update about how they got the building, and remember, it was like a surprise where the building was going to be in downtown Aiken, nobody knew.
Well, the county, well, just quick background, I won't take much time. I think the county just built a big palace for all their government entities, and they consolidated a lot of those buildings that scattered over the county, and this used to be one of their record keeping buildings. So through all of that and discussing some of the county guys, the county volunteered to this idea. And it's ideal for the foundation because it remains a county building and the county's doing the routine maintenance. The foundation has to do the capital upgrades and that type of thing. Where is it located? It's on Lawrence Street. I don't know how familiar you are with Aiken, but it's right across the street from AT&T has it. And it's on the other side of the street, right down the end of Lawrence.
That would be great if you could maybe do a few minutes.
Yeah, I know our next meeting is in Savannah. I don't know,
I would start that with.
they're not, Walter, they can get all the way down to Savannah. Would have been nice to incorporate this particular presentation. The invitation's there. We're meeting into that at the next meeting, so logistically.
I can't remember, maybe last time we added it during the admin committee, when we had our full board meeting, we were kind of bringing guest speakers, and we had some time during our admin meeting, that maybe we can add 5 or 10 minutes to our presentation then.
Sure, that would be a good job.
One of your committee meetings, like your full board meeting, either way, whatever's best for you, but the Remediation would be a lot easier, because you got a better chance of getting somebody available. I'm out there, or Walter, and somebody else from the board can come do it, so.
You may want to work with the support team in terms of, May, there may not be room on the agenda because the agenda is already out. But to work with them, and, if I can let you know when it can be scheduled.
Yeah, I think, with, not the May meeting, because, but certainly, say July or, September, you know, when we're back here, we could, as part of the administrative meeting, you know, a presentation, Heritage, you know, Museum, SRS Heritage Museum presentation information could be, proposed for that agenda. The rest of the committee feel good about that? Okay. Got a few minutes. Are there any other issues this committee, David?
Well, this is in the vein of historic preservation also. I'd be curious to get a position statement from DOE on their thinking with regard to whether or not to apply for National Register status. I'm sure they have valid reasons for their current status, but I'd like to hear what they are. And I'm frankly, being a new member, I don't know if the CAB has ever addressed this issue before in terms of a recommendation to DOE. So I'd like to ask the support staff to research that.
Statement on their decision on the historic preservation.
No, I would like to ask DOE to give us a position statement on National Register application status, but I'd also like to have the support staff research previous CAB recommendations on anything to do with National Register status.
And then write a recommendation.
If necessary, yeah.
Yeah,
Once we get more information, we might want to make a recommendation.
One thing you might want to ask, part of that is they set something up with the Manhattan project, the sites that are related to Manhattan, like Hanford and Oak Ridge, and they're under some kind of a thing similar to the foundation, but it's all the Manhattan project in World War II. And somehow or other, Savannah River's not on that because of the dates that they put when this Manhattan project thing is set up on it. So you might add that to your request just to get an understanding of how they're addressing that part of the complex versus the near-term part of the complex, Savannah River, Rocky Plateau.
Yeah, David, I think you're making a strong case to develop a recommendation. I'm not saying you specifically have to write it, but this committee could could create a recommendation to ask, you know, SRS why, you know, what is their status with?
Do we need a recommendation?
No, we don't need a recommendation to ask them for information. We should just ask them for the information, and then, based upon their reply, we may or may not want to make a recommendation. We only have half the story right now, and I'd like more information before I even see a need for a recommendation, frankly. Asking for information, it doesn't require a recommendation.
No, I agree. Logistically, that's like a follow-up request to what's already been presented here today. I'm just trying to think how we could incorporate information being provided. We already have our work plan for the year. So what David's asking would be an additional work plan item.
Well, could we just do it as a follow-up question, just like we normally do?
Answer and email it.
Get to the answer and send it out. And then you can move on from there, get more information and move on.
So have we formally asked for the information at this point? Okay, so we should expect an email response to this committee in regards to the information request that you just made.
If you like, I can write down the request so that it's clear, but if you think you've got it.
Got it?
Okay.
Believe you need to, see if there's any public comments.
Right, so it's the next
Okay.
piece on our agenda. Yeah, our meeting is, supposed to wrap up at 6:20 PM today. So if there's no other committee discussion at this time, I'd like to, open this meeting up for public comment, and the public comment can be any particular issue that needs to be raised to this committee. So I'll ask those in attendance, anybody would like to make a public comment today?
Is the representative from the lab gone now?
I don't see him in the room.
Yes. Keith, you still have a question? You'd like
I
to
had
ask,
a
Ron?
question, I can't remember exactly how I worded it, my paperwork was taken away, but yes, I did have a question for him.
Well, if you'd like to ask the question, it could be follow-up provided to you.
There's a public, there's notes, a place for notes out there, if you'd like to write down what your question was or something and submit it, and we can find out and email you. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any other committee?
I'd like to, I'm Jack Butler with DOE. Just wanted to add something to the presentation on the Cold War Legacy Historic Program, is that about a third of the curation facility also houses some a good portion of the archaeology artifact collection as well. So that's something you want to check into if you do schedule a tour of that facility in the future. Most of that's it's mostly storage, but they do have a work area in there. It's not quite the same focus that the Cold War artifact historical program has.
Any other public comment? Committee affairs? Call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, I remember that.
Because I didn't know about it until I got back into my office. The construction work. And I drove right past it. And then I got to my office, I was looking at the news, and how many EPA were on top of it.
Okay, folks, we're ready to begin, y'all, with the next thing, please.
You don't want to come over here.
I didn't know everybody was sitting, I guess I could come over there, have them against us.
Like, you're isolated. Sit here.
I want to welcome everybody here, including, the people to the Facility Disposition and Site Remediation Committee. I'm Tom Barnes, I'm Chair of the committee. Other members are Bill Rhodes, Vice Chair, Louis Chavis, Donald Gillis, Eleanor Hobson, Ed Sturkin, and Louis Walters. And James, I'd like to ask, we got anybody on the line?
Mr. Rosen, I'm
Who?
Bill Rosen.
Bill Rhodes, okay. Welcome,
Hey,
Bill.
Tom.
Heather Cathcart, South Carolina DHEC.
Who's from DHEC?
Heather Cathcart.
Our next committee meeting is June the 9th here in New Ellington, at 6:30. Hope everybody will plan on attending. We have 4 open recommendations. Probably could close these recommendations, but what I'd like to do is carry them over to the committee meeting in May. Make sure everybody's had time to read the responses from these. They've been open for some time, but I think we've got responses from all of them now. So if you haven't read them, please read them and come prepared to discuss them, and let's close them if we can in May, on Monday in May. We have one update today and one presentation. Avery Hammett from DOE is going to give us a short update. And then we'll have Candace Freeman will talk to us about the federal facility agreement. So, Avery, turn it over to you, please, ma'am.
We have a place for us to do this, or just?
Okay, I'm Avery Hammett with the Department of Energy, and this is our first committee meeting giving our little talking points updates. So open to any suggestions, feedback, types of things that you all want for future updates. But I just try to pick a couple of the highlights since our last meeting. So we had representatives from the state, the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control came out on March 24th through the 26th to the Savannah River site to perform their annual unannounced Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, otherwise known as RCRA, inspection, which is their compliance evaluation inspection. You'll hear a lot of people say RCRA CEI, because if I ever say that, tell me no acronym. Try to say it all out for you. So they came and inspected all the hazardous waste management and storage facilities out at the site, and there were no fines or notices of violation that are expected. And we should get the official report from DHEC within a few weeks, and then I'll probably give you all an update on that as a bullet for the next time. So, or whenever we've heard from them. That's one. On April 14th, which I should have verified if this actually happened, personnel from the Office for the Assistant Manager for Infrastructure and Environmental Stewardship were anticipated to participate with the state of South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control in an inspection of the saltstone vaults 2 and 4, and that's a monthly inspection, which the purview of that doesn't so much fall under this committee except for members of Mike McElhaney's staff would participate from a compliance standpoint. That's something. And not to steal Candace's thunder here, but Appendix E of the Federal Facilities Agreement was approved for fiscal year 15. It was approved by the Environmental Protection Agency on March 26th and the state of South Carolina on March 31st. And you've had multiple presentations on that, and that back and forth between the two parties. You know, the site submits what we want, and then the state and the Environmental Protection Agency comments and back and forth. So you've had several ongoing presentations on that topic. The last will be today. So that's complete. And of note on that is that most of the future work in the soon, I don't know how you say that, but the soon to be coming up out years is going to focus on D area, on the D area ash project, which is the next bullet. Mobilization began on phase 1 of the D area ash project on March 30th. Which was survey activity and dewatering of the 488-2G basin. And the actual ash removal work is scheduled to begin this week. Did that happen?
We're still mobilizing.
Still mobilizing. And then the last one that I have is the Department of Energy has issued a new handbook called the Environmental Radiological Effluent Monitoring and Environmental Surveillance. That's a big mouthful report. That was issued in March. It's a handbook that's used, replacing a previous version, to be the developmental and implementing program guide for environmental monitoring. And I have a link where that is available on the on DOE's website, and I gave Tom a copy, and I have one other copy of these talking points that has, I'll give it to Tina, and she'll put the link so that if anybody's interested in accessing that handbook, it will be available via the website. Okay.
And can we get a copy of your talking point?
Sure.
Email to us.
If I just give them to you, I'll give them to you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions, comments for Avery?
Okay, go.
Not, thank you very much, Avery. Candace.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Candace Freeman. Again, I am a project manager for the area infrastructure and area completion division within the office of the assistant manager of infrastructure and environmental stewardship. I am giving you a presentation today. I'm filling in for Ryan Hennessy. He is the site federal facility agreement manager. I sort of work closely with him. And we're just going to talk today about the approved federal facility agreement, Appendix E. Our purpose here today is just to provide information discussed in the Citizens Advisory Board's recommendation number 279, which was the federal facility agreement update provided annually. And the information that you're going to see further on is going to be on the approved fiscal year 2015 Appendix E submittal. And our second purpose here is just to meet the Citizen Advisory Board's facility disposition and site remediation committee annual work plan commitment. The federal facility life cycle list of cleanup milestones for the Savannah River site waste site. It's made up with 3 different subparts within Appendix E. E1 contains enforceable milestones for the current fiscal year, which is 2015. Appendix E2 contains the enforceable milestones for the next fiscal year, which would be fiscal year 2017. Okay. And Appendix E contains the planning milestones for the current fiscal year 2018 and beyond. So that's 3 years out and all this and beyond. And the difference is that Appendix E3 is just the planning milestones, while Appendix E1 and E2 are the more enforceable ones. The Department of Energy updates Appendix E annually and submits it to the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control and the Environmental Protection Agency Region 4 in November each year. The Federal Facility Agreement document, there are several here. And with each of the milestones that are listed inside the Appendix E, they correspond to these SSA documents. First here we have is the Remedial Investigation Work Plan, and this plan is used as a basis to determine the extent of contamination. The Remedial Investigation Report with the baseline risk assessment, that's an assessment of the nature and extent of the contamination in the waste site and the associated health and environmental risks. Once we've identified those health and environmental risk and the nature and extent of the contamination, we then go on to the feasibility study. And that allows us to define the development and analyze the range of cleanup alternatives for the unit. Thereafter, we have the proposed plan. It identifies the remedial alternative preferred by the core team, which is made up of members from the Department of Energy, the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, and Environmental Protection Agency Region 4 for the unit, and it allows the public to comment. And these is usually found in the environmental bulletin, where you'll see that these documents, the proposed plan is available for public comment. If the waste unit is controlled mostly under the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, also known as CERCLA, the public has 30 days to provide their comments. If the waste unit falls under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act and the CERCLA, Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, if it falls under those 2 statutes, the public has 45 days to respond. And once after that time frame and the public provides their comments, it's then considered and placed inside of the record of decision. And the record of decision is the official report documenting the chosen remedy and why it was selected. Next, you have the remedial action implementation plan, which is just a plan that they use to implement the selected remedy that you talked about in the record of decision for the waste unit. This lists the 3 waste units that you see here: the wetland area, Dunbarton Bay, the P area groundwater aquifer unit, and the A area ash piles at A area coal pile runoff basin and outfall to A13 have all been changed. The changes were proposed and accepted in the Appendix E, and so that if these 3 units were so that the DOE could commit to the Department of Energy, commit to the on-time execution of the D area ash basin 4881D, 4882D, D area ash landfill 4884D, and D area coal pile runoff 489D. And and they want to finish these projects between fiscal year 2014 and fiscal year 2020. So the wetland area Dunbarton Bay experienced a 2-year delay, which is indicated in Appendix E. The P area groundwater aquifer unit, that also experienced a 2-year delay. And the A area ash pile, coal pile runoff basin, and outfall, A13, experienced a 4-year delay. And the regulatory document and the interim remedial action study. And the areas listed below, F area aquifer unit, N area aquifer unit, K area, L area, and A area aquifer unit were delayed, but the previous area completion dates were kept as early action dates and are listed below. Due to ongoing missions in these areas, the final actions are proposed for fiscal year 2013 and beyond. And due to ongoing missions, the issue record of decision dates for the areas listed below: C area aquifer unit, S area tank farm, H area tank farm, and E area low level waste facility, have been moved out to fiscal year 2042 and beyond. Please note that there is an ongoing early action currently going on at the C area aquifer unit. The milestones for the groundwater aquifer units were also proposed for revision to ensure that assessment remediation that is after or concurrent with the completion of the area aquifer units. And that's A area groundwater aquifer unit, Central Shops groundwater aquifer unit, K area groundwater aquifer unit, the general separations eastern and western groundwater aquifer unit. Okay. And those groundwater aquifer units were moved out to correspond with those areas that I described in the slide before, because usually the groundwater aquifer units are tackled and handled once some of the facilities and the ancillary buildings in those areas have been D&D'd and removed. The remediation of the D area ash basins, 488-1D, 488-2D, D area ash landfill, 488D, and D area coal pile runoff basin, 489D, will be completed by fiscal year 2020 under removal action. However, under surplus, the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, early action decisions will be developed for these aquifer units. The schedule for submittal of these early action documents are provided below. And currently, what's happening now at the D area ash basin is that work has been started on the 488-2D in ash basin and the 488-4D ash landfill. And what's being closed at D area would be the 488-1D and 2D ash basins, the 488-4D ash landfill, and the 489D coal pile runoff basin. Emissions at the final action D area aquifer unit record of decision is proposed for May 2045. The D area groundwater assessment remediation will coincide with the remediation of the D area ash basin 488-1D and 488-2D, D area ash landfill 488-4D, and the D area coal pile runoff basin 489D. The field starts with that with the current date was September 30th, 2016, but the approved date was June 30th, 2020. And the remedial issue, where we're going to issue the record of decision, the ROD, which we proposed, and it was approved of June 30th, 2023, and we proposed the current date that was due was prior to the submittal, the approval of the Appendix E was September 30th, 2019, and the remedial action starts. The current date due was March 31st, 2020, and the approved date in the September 30th, 2024. The issue, the decision and the remedial action, such the dates have been revised from June 17 and September 2018 respectively. So therefore, we're going to issue the record of decision for the wetland area at Dunbar Bay in June of 2018, and then we're going to have the remedial action start in September of 2018. Majority of the Cape Area Groundwater Aquifer Unit groundwater monitoring wells were sampled in the fourth quarter of calendar year 2014. The Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, Region 4, and South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control will meet in the near future to discuss the results of the groundwater monitoring samples and to develop a path forward until the planned field start in September 2042. There was a Adobe webcast that's currently scheduled for April 22nd of this year. The interim action milestones for the Sea Area Groundwater Aquifer Unit has been deleted as the Department of Energy, Environmental Protection Agency, Region 4, the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control has determined that an interim action is no longer needed. The final action milestones for the Sea Area Groundwater Aquifer Unit will remain as 2020, where the record of decision. And June 2021 we will start the remedial action. In addition, the milestones for the submittal of a focused feasibility study in fiscal year 2018 and proposed plan in fiscal year 2019 will be added to future submittals of Appendix E. An upcoming remedial and removal decision document. Currently, the document before you, Rev 0 of the D Area Act 4810 removal site evaluation report, engineering evaluation cost analysis, also known as the ECA, to the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control and the Environmental Protection Agency, Region 4, in February 29, 2016. This will be the only decision document that will be coming up within the next year and a half. This is projected to be made available for 30-day public comment starting in May of 2016. In summary, you can find the complete FFA agreement in its entirety on the website listed in front of you, which is the www.srs.gov/general/program/soil/FA/HTML. So the actual federal safety agreement, the document itself, you can find it at the www.srs.gov/general/soil/FFA/FFA.pdf. If you have any question or answers, I will take whatever I can answer here with the help of Ms. Gilman Paul from S&LM. We will definitely get the answer back to you.
On page 10, is there a way that the results from that monitoring will be available online? Or is that something that we can get emailed? The results of the groundwater monitoring?
Typically that's put in like some of the documents we were discussing before, the work plan and stuff like that, because this is an ongoing process for K area groundwater. It's not to the point where there's a work plan or a document that would have the results in there. This is just, and so they're having this meeting to determine how they're going to do things from this point forward.
as far as the monitoring and reporting. But I can check, but typically it's not issued to the public this early in the process.
Do you have any other questions?
Many of these delays are because of ongoing projects.
Well, it's for, right now, we're trying to commit a lot of our resources to the D area. Projects that I mentioned before with the ash basins, the ash landfill, and the coal power runoff basins. So, that's our main focus right now, is just to devote all of our, pretty much time and energy towards getting those waste areas closed, especially due to their close proximity to the Savannah River. So a lot of our time and resources are dedicated to those projects in the area.
So basically, it's a budget issue then.
I
mean, the focus is, you're putting it where there's a higher risk for environmental contamination or harm.
Exactly.
But does that mean, is it because of budget shortages that they're making that priority rather than doing a site-wide? When you see these delays, year after year, we just see more and more delays, but, that makes sense in terms of what you've just said, but still, these other areas are going unfinished.
Let me help you
Delayed.
with this. My name is Michael McDelinas. I'm with DOE. I'm the Assistant Manager for Infrastructure and Environmental Stewardship. Congress gives us a budget to work with every year, and there's only a certain amount of it that's apportioned to the environmental remediation. So is it budget? Yes, the Congress gives us a budget just like anybody else has a household budget to go live within. And when we negotiated cleanup milestones with the state and with the EPA, there was a preference from the regulatory agencies that this was an area they wanted to focus on. In fact, they wanted to put an enhanced cap beyond what the regulations currently require for the D area ash basins. And when we negotiated that, is okay, if we're going to do this, we have to really pretty much focus all of our resources on this particular activity because of the risk. So ultimately, it comes down to there's only so many funds to go do this, and this is where we put them.
How did you come up with all the magical numbers? I noticed in scanning that many other programs are simply arbitrarily pushed out 4 years, some 20. Where do these numbers come from?
They're not arbitrarily pushed out. We actually have a plan Doug Yancey could come in that he manages. It lays out all of the activities from now until the site is closed. And as the budget forecasts are changed, we get direction from the president and OMB on how the budgets are formulated. We predict out how much money there's going to be, and with escalation and everything like that, we can start putting dates instead of roughly when we think these would be done. These are guesstimates. Look, when you're talking 20, 30 years out in the future, you understand how Congress and the budget cycle works. At any point in time, we're executing the current budget. Congress is working on developing a budget for next year, and we've started formulating the budget for 2017. Beyond that, it's all what might happen, and you're going to have changes of administration, you're going to have changes of politics. These are our best guess based on the federal budget cycle of when we think we'll be able to do that, and we review them every year as we go through the appendix, looking at the life cycle plan. So.
Well, I understand all that. I've heard Doug many times, but still, we have dates that have to keep getting changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just asking, what's the basis for adopting the number?
Well, our budgets keep getting changed. Congress passes a different budget every year.
That would be changing dates.
Correct.
Yeah.
If Congress changes the budgets, or if Congress starts putting flat budgets out for the different agencies and the federal government, that's going to affect, we can't commit and keep doing things on certain dates if the fiscal picture changes in the country.
But instead of deciding it will be pushed out 4 years, we decided it'll be pushed out 20 or 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a projection of the budget?
Yes.
What you think?
That's based on what the current planning budget is from the administration out to 30 years. Future administrations can change that. Just like when President Obama came in and he had the shovel-ready ARRA projects ready to go, and if the next president came in and had an ARRA too, we'd have to go back and be changing all these things as well. The fiscal picture of the country. We work at whatever the representation for the year. And for the
Well,
next
I
year.
guess what I'm asking is,
Say, here's your what all those planning assumptions are, you'd have to get down here to explain them all, but they give us instructions as to what we can anticipate if the budget is with a certain amount of escalation or flat, or the future as far as that's what you use to go, when you know what your budget is and you know how much things are gonna cost and the duration that we estimate it's gonna take to go do these things, it's just that the computer programs can do that automatically for us. Computer program. Mm-hmm. It's a lot better than doing it by hand. Being an engineer, I can assure that my hands, oh my God, I think my hand would blow up.
one follow-up question. Will we see the decision shortly on the C area that was up for public comment?
I'm not really sure. Sheila, is there?
The ride, probably, I think the ride is scheduled to be issued by the end of this fiscal year, so if you like September, because there's a process it has to go through in order to be issued.
Anyone present? Thank you very much. And like I said, I was just filming and providing him the actual federal facilities.
Thank you, Candace and Avery. Do we have any other comments from the public? Anybody from the public want to speak or make comments? Anybody on the committee have anything else? Stand adjourned.
Oh, I thought you were just asking.
No. Any comment? You got a comment? Okay. We're not.
Well, I didn't know you were asking for, I didn't know you didn't have a committee visit. I'm Marilyn Carson, I'm from South Carolina. I just wanted to make some comments on Department of Energy's response to recommendation 329, which is providing opportunity for the public to provide written comments on Savannah River site cleanup decisions. This letter was actually approved at the January CAB board meeting. The Department of Energy accepted part of the recommendation. And I wanted to comment on the subpart 1. In the recommendation, it said, the first one was to schedule public comment periods on documents that are relevant to the federal facility agreement and other documents that are a concern to the public in a time frame that allows the board to take formal written action. It's rather surprising that the Department of Energy has not accepted this subpart. They're not considering comment periods being put out at a time that the CAB could provide a written response. I found that I was rather surprised at. I wanted to make a specific comment about each paragraph. They didn't accept this sub-comment, or this subpart. And it says the public comment periods conform to the requirements of the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and to the enforceable project schedules and milestones in the FFA. The public is given 35 days. Actually, I think that should be 30 days, not 35. And then 45 days for RCRA can be extended upon request. This time frame is not compatible with the time needed for a presentation to the CAB on the document and the drafting and approval of a formal CAB recommendation.
particularly since there may not be a CAB meeting scheduled during the comment period. If we look at the SRS, federal facility, public input, community involvement plan, in the back we can see what the requirements are under those two regulations. And these are minimum time frames, not maximum. The law does not say that the public can have 30 days or the public can have 45 days. Those are minimums. It says at least 30 days, at least 45 days. So those could be extended. I realize then there is a formal way that you can ask for an extension of a comment period. When the public has to do that, that adds a lot of work for the agency, actually. Then they have to go through, then they have to announce the extension of that. If some consideration would be given to this body, that is the formal way that input is given to the Department of Energy, it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense not to give that consideration and to give longer. I find that disheartening. Second paragraph under their reason for rejecting this. More importantly, the public provides comments directly to DOE, and the CAB is not responsible for collecting and compiling that input before it is provided to DOE. I find that statement strange. If we again look at Savannah Riverside Federal Facility Agreement, Community Involvement Plan, on page 15, there's a statement that talks about CAB meetings. Activity 1. The SRS will continue to use the CAB to provide advice, information, and recommendations on issues affecting the cleanup program. And if we go down here to the objective of that, to provide advice and recommendations to DOE from the public's perspective. The CAB is to get input from the public. So this comment is very puzzling to me, that it says that it is not the CAB's responsibility to collect that information. It seems to go absolutely contrary to what the CAB has stood for. That is puzzling. A very valuable and appropriate role for the CAB through its Facilities Disposition Site Remediation Committee would be to facilitate the public's understanding of the alternatives being considered for significant cleanup actions, thereby helping members of the public to provide input to DOE during the public comment period if they choose to do so. It seems to me that it's DOE's responsibility to make the public understand the alternatives, not the CAB's responsibility. So again, to me, these two roles are backwards in this response. Then the final paragraph under this subpart. Although a CAB recommendation is welcome, a formal CAB recommendation on each document is probably not feasible and not essential to the process of public input on cleanup decisions. Comments can be and have been made by individuals, including CAB members, during the comment period, and they will receive the same consideration by DOA that a formal recommendation would receive. Unless something is given in writing to the Department of Energy, it does not become part of the public record. And I think it's important that the CAB have an opportunity to give DOE input that becomes part of the formal record. So I found this to be disappointing, and frankly, it was surprising in view of the public involvement process that especially been put in the hands of the CAB and how they are to function, not in isolation, but to get input from the public, and not to have public comment periods so that the CAB can do that is disheartening.
Thank you, Marilyn. Any other comments? Any committee members have further comments, either here or online?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we will stand adjourned. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Savannah.